And then this is where you can decide whether you want to make changes to, let's say, the eyes or the nose. Then you can still go back to the liquify filter or use another technique where you merge all your currently available layers together and you just extract a certain detail from it. So let me show this with the eyes. What I'm going to do is to use a shortcut, Command Option Shift E or Control Alt Shift E on PC will merge all your currently available layers into a new layer on top of everything else. So that's like flatten layers onto a new layer while still keeping the original ones. And then from this one, I'm going to make a selection of the eyes. I'm going to make a selection of this eye first. And actually, I'm going to increase the feather a bit more before I make the selection. So I will keep my selection feathered. There's one selected eye. I press Command J. There's already on its separate layer. I'm going to do the same with the other eye, like that. Command J again. From that connected or merged layer, I can then delete that layer because that's the only thing I need it for. And then I can select the eye, and using the free transform tool, we can increase the size and move these details around as well, or even stretch them out to open her eyes up a bit. Now this is where you have to be careful and you have to be aware of proportions of the face because you can very quickly end up having very weird looking details. I'm just going to try to adjust the eye like that. I can show you before and after. So basically we increase the size a bit and also open her eyes up slightly. Then I can select the other eye. Again, I'm going to do the same. Stretch it out a bit like that. And then we can slightly move it around, maybe stretch it out a bit more just to keep it more open. We can also rotate it slightly like that. Now again, we can see before and after. So from a distance, when you look at it, you might feel like one of the eyes is too small compared to the other. Then you can still increase it in size. And if you feel like you need to move them a little bit closer to the eyebrows, you can move them up or down together. It's very freaky, I know, but this is again something you can decide to do or not. It's completely up to you whether you need to do this or not, whether you're asked to do it or not. So I just wanted to show you it's possible. Once again, before and after. So that's a technique you can utilize, but in this case I'm just going to delete this because I think it's fine the way it is. She has a lovely smile again. I like the way the eyes look. The only thing I would definitely do is the dodge and burn. So we know how to do that. On a separate layer to make sure it's non-destructive, we will fill this in with 50% gray. So I'm using fill from the edit menu, 50% gray, and then I set it to overlay. Then I switch to the burn tool, increase the brush size, and just like we did in the previous video, we are going to apply contouring here on the cheeks, on both sides. Not overdoing it, just adding a bit there as well, on the sides of the nose as well, like that, and also here under the eye and on the forehead around there. Also around the neck, we can do a bit just to really make her face stand out more. And now that we are ready with that, we can switch to the dodge tool and we can add a bit highlight on the forehead, also around here on the eyebrows, like that, on the nose, on the chin, on the jawline. Make that brighter. Here under the eyes as well. And then if we check before and after, that's our contouring. So highlights and shadows added. We can always reduce the opacity, blur it out as well if we want to blend it a little bit into the whole image. And we can also create quickly a blush layer. So I set the layer to color blend mode, and using the brush tool, I'm going to pick a color from her lips. And although she has already a natural blush, I'm just going to emphasize that a bit more, add a little bit more blush here on the cheeks. So when I turn it off and on, you can see it's a very subtle amend. Now we can switch back to the previous layer, and by the way, don't forget to name your layers because later on it might be difficult to find what you use them for. So contouring or contour, like that. And the same layer I'm going to use again with the dodge tool and paint over her eyes a bit just to have a little bit more brightness there. We can do the same for the teeth, but we will come back to the teeth a little bit later. That's a bit brighter now. So that was before and after. Slightly better. We can also use the burn tool and just emphasize her lips a bit more by adding a bit of contour around it, like that. You can see it now before and after. That just helped the lips to look a little bit more rounder. Then if we want to really make the eyes look glowy, we can go even closer. Still using the dodge tool, we can paint around this part even more extensively, or we can even use highlights and then add a bit more highlights here. That will make the eyes look even more glowy if you just add a bit more extra highlights in there. So you can see now before and after, that really added some additional life to the image. You can also add a bit of highlight closer in the center of the eye, somewhere there. So that just makes it look like it's reflecting some details from the environment more than before. So just a subtle effect, still using a separate layer, completely non-destructive, so we can always decide whether we want this or not. We can reduce the opacity if we want to make it more subtle, but I'm quite happy with that on the eyes. And we can also sharpen some details a bit more, especially the eyes. Once again, for that I would use a separate layer. We can put that all on the top, choose sharpen for the name, and then remember the sharpen tool, make sure it uses the sample all layers. Protect detail can be on, and then you can paint over the eyes for sure, maybe also the teeth like that, and the nose, and probably that's enough. You can also do it on the hair if you want to emphasize that detail, but that altogether added some additional contrast and sharpness on these details, which looks much better already. You can decide whether you want to just whiten the teeth or you also want to adjust the teeth. So to work a little bit like a dentist, you can really focus on the teeth. And at this point, what I would do is to choose the Liquify Smart Filter, double click on that, and then we zoom closer. Now here you won't see any changes that you've done after the Liquify, but what I would do is almost the same what we did before. Using the forward warp tool, we can drag these teeth, push the gum up slightly to even out the teeth, to have a little bit more even line here on the top, pushing the gum back. You can use a smaller brush if you want to push it even further up. So something like that. Now we can decide to have even longer teeth. And then of course do the same thing even in the background. And then we could drag this one slightly down if you feel like that's a little bit too high up. And of course, even this one can be moved up slightly just to adjust and have a very even teeth. I wish it was that easier. My teeth would need some correction as well. We can of course drag these points down and then that one up. So you can really get that perfect Hollywood smile from for every image by adjusting the teeth like this. And you can see it's very easy to do. You can really spend some time on this until you get it right. But once you feel like it looks good, you can click OK. And once again, we can see it before and after. So this is after using Liquify. This was before. So after Liquify and before. So there's now two things we use Liquify for, the jawline and also the teeth. So we can continue whitening the teeth by using an adjustment layer on top of everything else. Hue saturation set to yellows and drag the saturation down all the way. But don't forget that this is going to remove the yellow color from everywhere in the image. So instead of using it like this with the white mask, which allows this to happen everywhere in the image, you either create the selection first and then apply this, or even later, you can just press Command or Control I to invert the mask, and that way removing it from the image completely. And then switching back to the brush tool, using it with full opacity set to white color, you just paint over the parts where you want to apply it. So in this case, the teeth can be painted over quickly. You shouldn't go over the gum, obviously, just the teeth. And we can see now before and after. Just a very quick touch up on the teeth, like that. You don't need to make it brighter because that will make it fake. I usually just set the saturation to -100, and I think that works perfectly.